Hi, my name is Paulie. I'm an author, and I'd like to share a story I call I Will Rescue You. Earlier I shared a story about how when I got born again, I happened to be in business. I was a business person and I really loved, I enjoyed being an entrepreneur. But then the Lord shared with me that His purpose for my life was not to be in business, but to be a laborer in His harvest. Now, I didn't like this at all. I wanted to continue in business. So, what I did was that, like Jonah, I ran away. I ran away from the Lord's voice. I didn't want to hear that I was not to be in business anymore. But by the time I accepted the Lord's purpose for my life, and closed the business, things were not good at all. All doors seemed to have been shut. And in fact, the business ended up being in quite a bit of debt. So, but finally, I accepted and I became a laborer in the Lord's harvest. And He began to direct my life in the direction that He wanted it to go. But then, about 3 years after I had closed my business, one day I'm sitting in my home, just minding my own business, and I receive a call. This call is from a man I don't know, but he seems to know my name. And when he confirms it's me on the other end of the line, he tells me his name and he tells me he's been retained by a certain law firm to deliver a letter to me in person. Now, when he says the name of this law firm, I recognize it as one of the largest, most prominent, no nonsense law firms in this country. And for sure, I've had no dealings with them. So I ask him, what is this letter about? And he says, it's a judgment against you concerning a debt that you owe a certain bank. And when he says this, I remember that by the time my business was closing, uh, the bank had made a certain payment on our behalf. There was not enough funds in our bank account at that time, but the bank went ahead and made this payment on our behalf. Now, as co-directors of the business, we realized that the bank had made this payment on our behalf, and we decided we would repay this money as soon as the funds became available. But things went from bad to worse, and by the time the business was closing, we had not been able to make this payment. So now the chickens have come home to roost 3 years later. So I tell this gentleman, now I closed my business 3 years ago, so I don't have an office anymore. Where would you like us to meet? And he says, let's meet at the offices of this law firm. And I agree. So as soon as I put down the phone, I decide to take this matter to the Lord in prayer. And I pray. And as I'm praying, the Lord responds very quickly. And He tells me, that debt is yours. Just make arrangements with this gentleman, meet him at the law firm, agree to a payment plan, and begin to make the payments until you finish off the debt, because the debt for sure is yours. Now, I'm a little bit nervous about this. So, what do? I take the phone and I call my lawyer. I explain to her the situation. She listens and then she tells me what that judgment means is that the law firm can take any action to recover those funds without further reference to you at any time, because the judgment has already been made in the courts. In fact, they can even take you to the auctioneers to recover those funds. And so she suggests that instead of accepting a payment plan immediately, what we need to do is to file a response first in the courts. So here I am. I have the Lord's counsel on one side, where he says, agree to this payment plan, and I have the lawyer on the other side, dead set against this. And I understand where she's coming from. So I decide, let me pray again. But of course, the Lord has not changed his mind. So that evening, I have a talk with my husband. I explain the situation, and we agree on a certain amount that we can be paying towards this debt on a monthly basis. And then I call the gentleman, and we agree on a date where we can meet at the law firm. So the day comes, and I meet him at the law firm, and we proceed to the department that handles outstanding debts. And when I get there, I find a lady at the desk, And she begins to show me emails and correspondence of all kinds, letters, court documents, uh, that I've never seen in my life. And I tell her, when I closed my business, I closed my email, I closed the PO box. And so I've never seen this communication. And that's why this debt is outstanding. And that indeed is the truth. And so she tells me, okay, then let's work out a payment plan. And so we sit down and I share with her what we had agreed with my husband, the amount that we have agreed to pay on a monthly basis. But to my surprise, despite her initial hostility, she tells me, you know what? Don't commit to such a high amount per month as your repayment. Instead, bring it down a little bit so that in case of anything, you'll still be able to pay. And that's what we do. We revise the payment amount downwards, and I sign all the necessary documents. And the next month, we begin to make the payments. Now, God is good and He is so faithful, because though it takes a whole year for me to finish paying that debt, at the end, I'm able to complete the payments. Of course, life happens and I miss one or two repayments, but the law firm simply writes me a polite reminder on both occasions, and I'm able to make up the missed payments. When I wrote this story, I titled it "I Will Rescue You" because there's a verse in the Bible that says, "I have made you and I will carry you. I will sustain you and I will rescue you." And the Lord is so interested in every detail of our lives, such that even though this debt, I incurred it at a time of disobedience, when He had instructed me to close that business and to begin to work out my purpose, that is the time I incurred that debt. Even though that was the case, He was still willing to help me. He was still willing to enable me to clear that debt and to come out of that very troubling situation. And so the Lord is there, and He is more than willing and more than able to rescue us when we are in times of challenge and when we're in times of difficulty. And that's why I titled this story, "I Will Rescue You."